And we are live. So, hello everybody. Welcome to our broadcast titled Why Flows right now, right? So we got started. I'm seeing the broadcast on my browser. Let me just shut off everything. Now, just want to give you a brief introduction to the broadcast. I spend most of my time building flows and teaching flows, and I have a guest today who has been doing that even for a longer time, and he puts out a lot of content out there. And the way we got together is we had actually Rachel. We're looking this up. Rachel in the Ohana in the Salesforce ecosystem, who apparently benefited from our content, and she put all of us on the same tweet. It was Terry, me, and Vibor thanking us. And, we got started with that tweet and said, why don't we do a broadcast talking about flows, because we are so passionate about flows. So this is that broadcast. Let's see if we can leave a little bit more time for people to join as we get started. Let me introduce myself in the process. So my name is Engin Utkan, and I'm 8 times certified Salesforce consultant. I'm a platform champion. I'm the founder of BRD Pro Consulting, a Salesforce registered consulting partner. I live in Jacksonville, Florida, and I am passionate about flow automation on the Salesforce platform, so I teach a lot of that. I'm also the Salesforce Saturday leader in Jacksonville, Florida. And I have a YouTube channel and a blog mainly talking about flow automation. And today I have a very, very valuable guest, Terry Miller from the YouTube channel, Terry's Tidbits. And Terry has been a professional in the consulting world and in the corporate world for about 25 years. Now he's an independent consultant, and he holds 15 certifications, and he is quite passionate about Salesforce and also flows as well. He's a platform champion, a leader of a Trailhead user group, a blogger, vlogger, a trainer, everything. I think, Terry, you can probably do a better job than I do introducing yourself. Please go ahead.
I would say that was pretty good. I was trying to think what else could I say there that you didn't connect on. But yeah, I definitely love Flow. It's one of those tools that I originally kind of ignored when it first came out, because I at the time it's like, well, I can just code, I can do triggers. That worked pretty good for me, so I kind of ignored it until more recently, and it definitely has a fantastic place in the tool set. So excited to be here. Thanks for inviting me and setting us up. I'm really looking forward to our conversation.
Yeah, so I mean, we do create a lot of Salesforce videos, Salesforce Flow videos, and put them out. But this is our first time doing a live broadcast together. So if you make a mistake, or if we fail to do some things right, so please try and be patient with us. And please go ahead and put your questions in the comments, because we are going to read through those questions, and we are going to display those questions on the screen and answer your questions. But before we get started with answering questions that you're going to put on LinkedIn or YouTube, this is a broadcast that we are right now doing on 2 YouTube channels, our YouTube channels, and the LinkedIn platform. Now, let us get started with the topic by talking about a popular question that a lot of people in the Salesforce ecosystem have. Like, are flows ready for prime time? Is this a good time to jump on the flow bandwagon? So what would you say about that, Terry?
I kind of opened with a little bit of that. I'm a huge fan. I think that it is ready. I think it was in the last release, we got that prior value piece. That was a big miss. That was not a feature that was available to us until just recently. I think with that one, there's not a whole lot that I haven't been able to pull off with Flow. There's still a few little things there here and there, but I have been using it exclusively now. I have not created a process builder. I haven't been on a workflow rule forever, but definitely have been transitioning everything that I'm doing over to Flow.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I don't really want to discount the people's worries in the ecosystem. I see a lot of posts about people saying, okay, well, it's not ready. It's still missing this. It's still missing that. But to be honest with you, some of the criticism is borderline procrastination for me, to be honest with you. Because look, I'll give you an example. There's so much talk about why we don't have subflows in before save record triggered flows, right? Well, before save record triggered flows are for updates on the same record. So how complicated can that get? Can't you really do without subflows right there? But I mean, it's a preference. It's a personal preference. So some people think that way.
Yeah, no, you're right. There are definitely some gaps that are there. But I have not ran into anything that it really is significantly slowing me down.
Yeah.
If it's not in the before, I can put it in the after. It's still the performance gain is still better than what it would have been if I would be doing it in Process Builder.
Definitely.
So it to me it makes sense regardless, even if you're missing. If it's something that you're naturally thinking, well, that should go in the before trigger. Well, if you can't do it there, you're still faster in the after trigger than you are doing it in Process Builder. So it's a win regardless. So I say make the change, make the transition. Andy, the thing that I was thinking with that I often hear from people is that Flow's intimidating. They go into that big white, I call it big white space, and they don't know what to do with it. And a lot of the training and things that I've been focusing on has been trying to help people transition from Process Builder over to Lightning record trigger flows, the record triggered ones, because I think this is my opinion. I think that's the easiest place to start to learn Flow, because there are a lot of similarities between what we are used to seeing in Process Builder and with a record trigger flow. Our options are narrowed enough that it just simplifies it, and is kind of the way that I see it.
Well, you haven't even seen this question. I think I put it on display right now. You answered it. It was Chandana's question. I hope I'm not butchering your name. Sorry about that. But he was asking, I want to learn Flow, but intimidated to start. And a follow up: how do I get comfortable getting started? So Terry is the ultimate expert in converting things from process to flow. I mean, my experience with Salesforce is younger, so I haven't spent a lot of time on process and workflows. I have played with them. So if you're thinking about converting things from process to flow, I think Terry has very good content out there, right, Terry?
Yeah, I've got a whole series that I've done. I think it's 8 videos and blog posts specifically around transitioning from Process Builder over to record trigger flows. And I look at all of the elements that we commonly are using in Process Builder and break that down to how does that look if you were doing it in a record trigger flow. Things as simple as the blue diamond that we have in Process Builder. That's our decision that you go out one side, it's true, down, and to the false to go to the next one. Well, Flow has that same element. It's not the same color, but it's still the same shape. And it has a very similar process. You go multiple directions out of that to execute the next thing that you want to accomplish. So what I've done in that series is just taken a lot of the elements that you're comfortable with Process Builder and showed you how to do that, or how it relates to doing that within Flow. And I've had really good success. I've done quite a few user group sessions where I've got a presentation around the same topic, and it's a lot of fun for me to teach. But I think the students and the user group members have had a lot of fun also with that presentation. So check out those blog posts. I think it could help you with that.
I totally agree. That's one way to approach a flow. And we have actually another comment that's kudos to you, and hopefully me as well. So Mark, thank you very much for your compliment. And if you have any other questions, please put them in the chat window. We are going to display all the questions, time permitting, and we'll answer those. Now, the next question that I had planned for us to answer, should the admins build new automation on flows, just on flows, or should they still be using workflows, process builders? What's your view on that, Terry?
I have not touched workflow rules except for to get people off of them in probably years. So yes, I think you need to start transitioning. The tricky piece, and especially if you're in a larger complex org, the tricky piece is how do you go about doing it? Because you are so invested in some fairly sizable process builders, and it's not like you can just wake up one morning and jump over to record trigger flow and replace all of that and not worry about it. It's, anytime you're replacing something that works with something brand new, it's you kind of go with that question of, if it's not broke, why fix it? I still think that it's worth the time to make the transition. I've wondered, and Andy, I kind of wonder your opinion on this as well, but I've been asked, do you think Salesforce will ever create some type of a migration path to automatically move our process builders over to Flow? So I'm kind of curious what your thought is maybe on that as well.
Well, the way I tell people when I get this kind of question, I say, okay, well, I think this is a very, very good time for anybody to learn flows, right? You got to learn flows really, really well right now, because for me, flow functionality is maturing. It has matured. So, and we have discussed this topic like on Twitter and on other social media platforms. Salesforce said during release readiness livecasts that they are not going to do anything to improve workflows or process builders anymore. So the development of those tools have stopped. There is no point in investing a lot of time into those tools. There is no definitive deadline or anything like that for those to go away. I don't want to give the impression that that's going to happen. But in the end, because they won't be improving these tools, and they are rapidly developing this flow functionality, it's a very good time for you to get on flow. So learn your flows, try and do everything on flows. And if you find something that you cannot do on flows, go back to your process builders or workflows, and you can do those there. That's my view on it, right?
Yeah, and one thing though that I would maybe throw in as a something to think about is when you're looking at the order of operations, and when you hit that save button, it's all of the steps that happen that Salesforce does behind the scenes. I would encourage you to try not to blend on the same object both process builder and your record trigger flows and workflow rules. Definitely not workflow rules, all three of them. That would be a disaster from a performance standpoint. I would probably recommend, Andy, that they look for an object that maybe they don't have a huge amount of investment on the process builder side, and transition something small to start to get comfortable with it. But don't let them live on the same object. If you're going to go to Flow, then go to Flow on that object. Get rid of the process builder altogether.
Yeah, I mean, definitely, if you can keep it on the same tool, that's definitely the best approach. But I mean, there could be scenarios where they where there could be two different types of automations running on the same object, doing completely different things, especially if you don't care the sequence of those operations and they don't really intervene with each other. That could work. There are a lot of things that come into play, obviously. It depends on whether your org has a lot of users, a lot of updates throughout the day being done on this object. If this object is one of the 5 major objects that you have on Salesforce, or is this like a custom object that some people use sometime, all kinds of stuff. But to your point earlier, I think you said we should have a tool to convert process to flow. Actually, we have a tool right now. I think it's on unofficial SF. There is a tool that takes process and then creates a flow out of it. Obviously, it's like in early stages, so you have to look at it, edit it, test it, and then roll it out. I haven't tried it myself, but I have seen that has been rolled out. So that would be very interesting to try. We have another question. Let me just display that one.
Sure.
This is a big one.
Okay.
Okay. So can you read that for us, Terry?
It actually hasn't shown up for me yet, Andy.
Oh, it hasn't?
No.
That is strange. Okay, I'll read it. Salesforce flows are definitely the future, and George Sarabia is saying that. One question from someone who is still in the early stages of learning Flow Builder: please address configuration beyond the single use case for a flow automation. In other words, how many flows on one object and how many subflows? Is there still a role for Process Builder to control the order of flow execution? And what about Apex triggers? Many thanks for sharing your insights with us. Thank you very much, George.
Do you want to take that one on first, or you want me to?
Yeah, let me just comment on that one. Now, what I have seen people have started doing, which is fantastic, if you can get this done. Now, if you can have actually a flow trigger run on your object, and off of that flow trigger, you can also launch some Apex, right? So you can, that way you can actually combine your actions of flow with Apex and control whenever Apex runs and what sequence Apex runs. So to answer that question, and obviously you cannot address all the use cases doing that, but that would be an idea for Flow to try and coordinate all the different actions that are being done on an object with different tools.
Yeah, that is true. I don't like to mix them. I just put that out there. I do like the ability to use invocable flow, or to use subflows. I think that is good. Maybe I'm just a little bit anal with some of that. I like being able to go to one place and see everything and not have to stop and think, okay, did I do that in Process Builder, or did I do it in a trigger? Did I do it in a flow? I like it. Just for me personally, I like the simplicity of trying to narrow it down to a single tool or method. I have no issue at all with adding subflows on it. I think that makes a lot of sense. That's very much object oriented, like coding. We would do that if you were a developer. You're doing that all the time. You're creating different methods that go out and do something specific for you, and it returns a result if it needs to, and then you continue on with your code. That's just smart design to do that. So I'm all about the subflow concept. But I do like to I like to standardize on a single tool.
Yeah, I mean, if it's possible, yes, definitely do that. Mm-hmm. But there will be some limitations currently.
There are, yes, for sure.
And our next question, we have talked about this one a little bit, but should they migrate existing workflows and process builders? I mean, is this the right time to take everything that's running even if it's not really causing an issue, and try and convert them to Flow?
I think it's an easy way for people to learn how to use Flow. Again, start with a smaller process builder that you have, work on it in a sandbox, get comfortable with the concepts of Flow and how it functions. To me, I think the answer is yes. It's a good time to start doing that. You will, if you've got some complex things happening, you will probably find some limitations. But it's getting fewer and fewer of those. So I would say yes to that question.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree. I would highly encourage people to look at that. But I mean, I wouldn't really start like if you have a lot of things on your workflows and processes, I wouldn't necessarily start a big project to try and convert everything. Maybe, like you said, take one by one and see what you can do, and in the process, learn. It's a great opportunity to learn, and obviously do it in the sandbox first, right?
Yeah, and Andy, for you and I who are consultants, that's really easy for us to say, yeah, go do it. No problem. Or hire somebody to come help you do it. But I know and I get the reality of what most of you are facing, and Andy, I know you do too. When you live sometimes in some very complex situations. A lot of your orgs are crazy complex, and for someone like us to come in and just say, well, yeah, go do it. That's really easy to say. It's much harder when you're faced with reality of what that means. And so you do have to, have a plan of attack for how you're going to go about doing it. I think that would be the key. I like the idea of starting small. I like the idea of crawl, walk, run. And this is a good opportunity to implement it that way.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes I say in these situations, especially when consultants like us are involved, everybody wants to do it actually, but nobody really wants to pay for it, right? So, so I mean, if there is a lot of effort converting the automation from the old tool to the new tool, and the old tool currently works, so that you have that dilemma, obviously. So we have another question from Octave, and Octave is saying, as an admin, should I learn how to use a flow or start to learn coding? That's a very good question.
I think it's up to what you enjoy doing. There's a lot of admins who have turned developer, and I think I congratulate them. I do some development myself. Your code is going to be more efficient than Flow. So if you're in a really complex environment, and you're bumping up against some governor limits and other limitations, a well-designed code is hard to beat. Record trigger flows are darn fast. Salesforce has done an awesome job with them. They're certainly more efficient than Process Builder. But I think it comes down to what you're comfortable with. If that's the path that you want to go down, learning to code, by all means, go learn it. I have found that that's just not the way that a lot of admins want to go. They want to be able to do that point and click. Salesforce's mantra has always been, if you can do it through point and click, click's not code, then do that. I think it's a personal preference there that you need to kind of look at and decide.
Yeah, I totally agree. What I want to add is, well, from a career standpoint, development standpoint of your own, let's say, professional track, I would always ask, what is your end game? What do you want to be, right? In the future? If you wanna code like about 90% of your time in front of a computer screen, there's nothing wrong with that. Actually, there is tremendous demand right now for that position. If you can do that, go ahead and go that route, right? But if you want to be more of an admin with development kind of capabilities, then try and go that route. And obviously, there is no harm in learning Flow before you learn coding, because it teaches you very, very basic, fundamental, and very important skills that you need to be able to code. What are those? Like a couple examples, like loop. Loop is a very, very difficult topic for many, and it's very important in coding. And you don't have all the options in Flow that you have in Apex, but you still need to understand the concept of loops. You need to understand the concept of variables really well, right? Variables and collection variables and record variables, record collection variables, all that stuff. That stuff you'll learn on Flows. And it's more visual. It's probably easier for an admin to learn first and then jump into coding, right?
Yeah, I think those are some excellent points there. Absolutely. There's a lot of commonality between the mindset of a developer and the mindset of somebody building flows. I find when I'm teaching and sitting side by side with admins and helping them learn flow, that's one of the concepts that I really try to help them see, is to learn how to break those steps down, understand the way that a computer is going to interpret what you're asking it to do. That's a really key concept. And I think you're right, Andy, that when you're a developer, in some ways has a little bit of an advantage because they're constantly thinking that way to begin with. And so it probably is fairly simple for a developer to jump in and learn Flow, just because they already think through the design aspect of it. Yeah, good.
So we have actually another comment, question. George is saying, Flow Builder is basically coding without the syntax. Agree?
Yes. Yes. I'll go with that.
I used that sentence before, by the way.
Have you?
And
is that the way that you described it that way?
Yeah, I use the same sentence, George. But the other day somebody was saying Flow is not coding, Flow is something else. But I don't remember what they said, which I didn't agree with. But I think it is coding. That's what I think. I mean, you don't have all the capabilities of Apex. I mean, coding is obviously,
sure.
It opens a lot more doors. But I think it is coding. You kind of need to understand the same concept and the concepts, and you have to use the same concepts.
Yeah.
So let me just see what else we have in our list of questions. Are there still valid use cases for new workflows and process builders? So I play a lot of pickleball. The people who know me know that. So I started calling process builders pickleball when I see PV. So I think you'll know this better, Terry, but I think the outbound messages are only available on workflows at this point. That's one reason why people go to workflows, right?
Yeah. The other one that I'd like to see maybe people transition away from is email alerts, because your email alerts that are part of the old workflow model are still leveraged, or can be leveraged inside of Process Builder. Well, in Process Builder, you have to use them to get an email out. In Flow, you can use them, but you also have the option of creating your email directly within the Flow. But that's another one that's kind of in that semi, it's still there, but you don't have to use it sort of place, wherever that is. It's kind of living in the middle.
I mean, the email functionality in Flows, I mean, it is not 100% baked yet. We have unofficial SF components, and those work quite well. Now we have, with the latest release, the rich text formatted email action, right? So that's good. But I tried to send an image out inside the email, and it didn't work. So there are some rough edges. There are some things in Flow. Let's be honest. There are some things in Flow. Even while we use some of these components, we're like, this should have worked better, right? It's the definitions, the parameters. There are some things that are rough, and there are also inconsistencies, by the way. Like, a Lightning component will work differently and will ask for different parameters, and the other ones will do something different. It's sometimes hard to find all the switches and dials, and to optimize something. It's an art. It's an art.
Yes, for sure.
So we have actually a very specific question now from George. He says, a question regarding your approach to flows. Do you build your variables first, or do you build them as you go along?
I do them as I go along for the most part, just because I'm always afraid I'm going to build something, and then as I get into it, I change the direction slightly, and then I've got to go clean up the stuff I already created. So I say build them as you go.
You seem to like a clean slate, right? You know what?
I do.
Were you doing auto layout before auto layout was cool, Terry?
Yeah, I was one of those that had to make sure the lines lined up. Yes, absolutely. Yeah,
I am super sloppy in my layout.
I've inherited a few flows and that others have built, and one of the things that I have learned to do, especially in larger flows, is just go through and click on each of the elements of the flow and just confirm, is this even being used anymore? And if it's not, get rid of it, because it slows that flow down, at least from the development side. I've inherited some really, really large flows, and those things can take an enormous amount of time to load.
Yeah.
And if I can clean out 100 plus of those elements that aren't needed, man, it makes a big difference.
And the where is this used is quite useful sometimes, right? Like the fields and everything.
Yeah, for sure.
So our next question was, how should people leverage code and low code automation together? We touched on that a little bit, right? But you actually, if you can, you want to stick to the same solution.
I will leverage them together. There's a lot of times, in fact, almost any flow that I do that of any complexity is going to require some Apex code in order to accomplish what I need to do. For example, I've got a flow right now that I've been working on with a client that has a table on it. Well, the table is coming from unofficial SF. It's the table or data table V2, I believe it is, but it doesn't operate off of an object to determine its columns. It's a text collection. So what that basically means is I have to define the columns and the data that go inside that table. Well, I can't do that easily within Flow. I've got to send that out to Apex code to do that more advanced logic. That then comes back into the Flow, all pre-formatted, ready for it to go into that data table. So I do a lot of that. And one of the other places that's really fairly common to use Apex with Flow is just to save records. So if you've got a flow, say, that you're putting out into a community site, and maybe it's a guest user access to run that flow, well, a guest user doesn't have access to write data back to your Salesforce org. And so in that scenario, you have to pass that save portion over to Apex to handle committing the data changes. So that's how I would interpret, mixing of the two is leverage the technology when you have to extend its capability with Apex.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I agree with that. I think where Salesforce is trying to go to is they want to have the developers build efficient and very good code that can be used and reused. And hopefully they can be invoked by several flows to do the same thing over and over again. And that way, the admins and the low coders, they can actually take these code components and they can use them and reuse them. And that would bring overall a very good efficiency, I think, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And you can extend that same concept to subflows, because that's how we should be thinking. Anytime you're building something within your system, think about that from the concept of can I use this in other places within the system? And if the answer to that is yes, then take and separate that out into its own subflow so that you can reference it from 3 or 4 or 5, 1,000 other flows to keep that logic centralized.
Yeah. And the next question I have in our list is, should there be only one trigger per object, one flow per object? What are the performance considerations? This is the highly controversial topic, right?
And I've been honestly trying to figure this one out too a little bit. I especially with the record trigger flows. Obviously, you have to have a before and an after. I think that's a given. If you're the way that I've always explained it is, if I am updating values in the object that triggers the flow, then I'm in a before. Mm-hmm. Anything else I'm doing, it's in the after. So you need to go before and after. I think that's just understood. Now, where it comes down to, do I have more than one before trigger and more than one after trigger? I don't do it. I consolidate it into a single one. Now, I may from that single kind of maybe consider it to be like a master flow. It's the one that actually is the one that your event or your save event triggers. I may call other flows from that, but I will put my record trigger flow looks an awful lot like Process Builder when it's done. It's multiple decisions going off and doing different things. If those decisions are true, coming right back into the next decision, working my way through it. I like that because then I can control the order. Yeah. So not only, Andy, am I a kind of a neat freak from that, making sure it's all clean. I like control too. I like to manage that environment. So
yeah, you run a tight ship, right? So yeah, I mean, I agree with you. If you can't do it that way, that's obviously ideal. But Salesforce kind of moved away from one flow per or one automation per object thing, and obviously this has performance considerations. Even if you don't run into problems, if you're working on one of the main 5 objects, if it's an account, if it's a contact, and you have thousands of call center agents pulling those up like every minute, then you are going to run into performance issues. So that you should be always considerate of that. But at the same time, I haven't really tested this, but if you're not worried about, for example, of the order sequence, and if you have 2 before save updates on the same object, this shouldn't really create any problems. I mean, from my standpoint, I haven't really tested that. Yeah. I need to play with that a little bit more to see. But if you can combine those, and you should be able to combine those into one, why wouldn't you? Like we have now prior value available to us. We can create all kinds of decisions and branches to see whether things are changing or not changing, and then condition our actions according to that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I just like the clean environment of having one place that I can go and I can see it all. And that was, to me, that was one of the advantages when Process Builder came out, that it provided over the old workflow rules. Because I mean, you'd have seemingly hundreds of workflow rules, and you would search through those things trying to find what you were, what's causing this update to happen. It's like, I don't know, it's one of these 1,000 items here. And if I can go into, when Process Builder came along and you had just the single process, debugging that stuff became so much easier. And so I use that same model when I've transitioned over to Flow. I want to have just that single spot, or as few places as I have to go look to try to identify and troubleshoot issues.
And I guess this is a good time to also talk about the resources that we can use to decide, because first of all, we don't have all the answers, and there's not really a definitive answer on this topic from anyone. There are different opinions, And there is actually a website, architect.salesforce.com, that I just found out on Twitter that many people perceive as an architect site, which it's not. I mean, it talks about architectural topics, but it's actually for everybody to consume those topics. And it has a wonderful page about trigger automation and which trigger automation you should be using. There's a table, and I would encourage everybody. Now I posted this one on both of our YouTube channels, the link, and I don't think I can post it to LinkedIn from here, but you can just Google it. It's available out there, and there are many resources. Join the discussion on this one because the decision is still out, right? It has not been made.
Yeah, I haven't heard anybody definitively say one way or the other on that. I think everybody kind of has their opinion. I mean, I still run into people who say, well, I'm going to still use Process Builder because it's significantly faster for me to build it there. Okay. I don't have a problem with that. I think at some point Salesforce has never said that it's going to go away, but they also said Classic's not going to go away as well. And now they're pushing us. For those that are still in Classic, I'm sure you're getting an awful lot of pressure to move to Lightning. Will that happen with Process Builder? I don't know, but there's certainly a whole lot more we can do with Flow.
Yeah, and I mean, be curious. Always try new things, right? This is a new tool.
Great idea. Yeah.
And I mean, but on the other hand, some people use the expression, things work until they don't, kind of thing. So yes, you can keep using workflows and process at the same time. Now, it looks like I missed a question. I apologize. Maria Hall asked us quite some time ago, about half an hour ago. Is it possible to default prior values into a radio button field or picklist field within a screen flow? Or is this a limitation of Salesforce? We seem to be able to default values for text, but not other types. You want to take that one, Terry?
Yeah, I hate that. I wish that is one I really wish Salesforce would get resolved, especially with picklist, because they make your picklist values required, and if you choose a choice variable or a record choice variable set, whatever it's called, it's always going to have a value in there, and it doesn't start off with none. And then if when they make it required, then it just becomes all that much more complex, because then what I end up doing is I create a choice that is a select something variable, or that none value. And then after I leave the page, I have to check, okay, did they select something or not? And then I have to send them back if they didn't. It's a nightmare. So I'm with you. I wish they would fix that one. And if somebody has a brilliant idea to how to get past that and solve for it, I'd love to hear it.
Yeah, I agree with you. That's a very ugly one, difficult topic. And I use the same workaround that you do. And I have that actually in one of my videos. I've done at the beginning of the year a series of training videos teaching flows, and I think this one was the second one on screen flows. It's divided into chapters, so I actually showed in that video how to do this workaround. If you want to go to the YouTube channel and pull that up, you can see it there.
Yeah, I haven't done as much on the screen flows yet from a training.
But it's not easy, and it's ugly. I mean, as you said, I mean, it's totally a workaround. It's not really what should be happening there, really.
No, that's fantastic. Yeah.
So, we have a comment from George. George says, we are all architects. Coding is not required for design thinking. George, you seem to be very strong on this topic. I'm going to introduce you to Rob from UK. Because we have Rob in the ecosystem. He's mainly a developer, and he used to be a little bit anti-flow. Now we are working on him.
I was anti-flow when it first came out, so it is what it is.
And Michelle is here. Hey, Michelle, good to see you.
Hey,
thanks for joining.
Yeah.
So Michelle says, At Chandana, she is answering the question. Awesome. Start with trailhead modules and then think what use cases you have to automate and sketch it out in a flowchart. Then try building it in a sandbox. I'm happy to help too. And if you don't know Michelle, you gotta know Michelle. Michelle is awesome, right?
She's awesome. She used to be a fellow Iowan just down the road from where I'm at. Then she moved away, but Michelle's an awesome person. I agree with you.
And
If you don't,
she's an MVP, and I think
she is. She just a brand new VP.
I think there are more than one Michelle's. I think because I see her responses everywhere on every platform, helping a bunch of people at the same time.
Very good.
So yes, George says Terry is my coach. Yes. Awesome.
Yeah, I know George for sure.
Okay, so let me see if we have anything else we needed to talk through. I think that's the end of my list. Well, maybe we can go before we close out that topic. Maybe we can go back to the performance considerations, right? A little bit more advanced in the topic. Maybe we can touch on the fact that we're not supposed to be doing queries inside the loops and DML updates inside the loops and things like that, right? Those things can get us into trouble, and we could hit governance limits. We could end up with a bunch of records that we don't really want in our org if we don't control, especially what's happening inside the loops.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and that's something that I have seen people that are new to Flow make common mistakes like that, where you just have to keep in mind that when you are updating records, that's an action that you can only do a very limited number of times before Salesforce is going to kind of yell at you. So if when you're thinking about the concept of being inside of the circular loop, if I am in that loop and I stop to do an update, and then I come back around and I stop and do another update, and I'm doing that maybe 100 times, I've got 100 times I'm having to go to the server to update a record. Salesforce isn't going to let you do that for very long. They're gonna stop that behavior, and you're going to get an error in your flow.
Yeah, I just pulled up the link for governance limits and I posted it to our YouTube channels. Many of you already know this, but this is a topic that relates to coding, all kinds of automation, and all kinds of stuff that we should be aware of. So Salesforce is an environment. We are in the cloud, and we are actually sharing common resources as clients of Salesforce. And Salesforce does not allow us to, let's say, go above our fair share when we're using those resources. So that's translated into governance limits of all kinds of database updates and queries and things like that. So that you can find out on this link. So we have about 12 minutes in the broadcast, and I think you have a hard stop at 4 anyway, right?
I do, yeah. Yeah.
So what did you want to tell the viewers today, other than the questions that we have gone through?
Yeah. One of the things I guess that I would throw out there, and I've been kind of toying with the idea of how, and Andy, you and I talked about this prior to the broadcast, of what's a good way of teaching people to do screen flows. I know you've been actively working on that, and one of the things that I always like to do is, when I'm teaching it, is to make things relevant to what people already understand, which is why I did the one from Process Builder to Lightning Record Trigger Flows. The other thing that I've thought about is just the idea of when I'm working with a client, I often am helping them learn Flow just by sitting side by side with them, and we take whatever their business use case is, and we begin to build it together. And I've been toying with the idea, and of just doing that in kind of a live stream type model, where perhaps I invite people to say, hey, submit your idea, and you and I would get together on a live stream and build it together. I'd be, if you're able to chat or something there, and if that's an idea or a concept that might be of interest to you, I'd be curious if anyone would be interested in working together in that. Obviously, it wouldn't be at any fee to you. It's just that you'd have to be willing to do it live, learn. You would have to do it in a sandbox where it's safe, no customer data. But if that's something that anybody's interested in, I would throw that out there. I'll probably put a post or something out related to that. I just have not had time to fully vet out the concept yet. But if people are interested, I would invite you to maybe touch base and let's talk through it a little bit.
Yeah, as you're speaking, I'm actually writing down our Twitter handles here.
Oh, yeah, great.
Very
good.
Well, in the Ohana, in the Salesforce ecosystem, we actually like to use Twitter a lot. So, yeah, I mean, this sounds like a great idea, Terry. And so I highly encourage you to write to any of us, by the way. We spend a lot of time trying to break things down that would be, for us, it would be easy to explain to people or teach to people. And we try to create building blocks, like that are simple enough so that we can build one thing on top of the other. And we've been experimenting with that. We have gone quite a bit. We have advanced quite a bit in that discussion. But at the same time, we still have stuff to learn. Like you, when I start working with people, I realize once in a while that, the way I explain things are too difficult for them. So I have to find a different approach, right?
Right.
And then another topic that's quite difficult as well is everybody comes in at a different skill level. So you want to come up with a system where they can say, okay, well, I know this, I know that, so let's skip through that fast. But then, you can start building on top of your own skill.
I know. I think it's important for us to give ourselves some grace as we learn. I know for me, and my wife would tell you this about me as well. Whenever I'm doing something new, I will like get so frustrated because I can't get it figured out. And she'll always say, well, "You'll get it eventually. Don't you do this every time, Terry?" and she's right. I do. And so give yourself some grace. Give yourself the ability to just relax. And if it's not clicking for you, don't give up. It will eventually. Just keep at it. Ask questions. Reach out to folks like Andy and I, and let us try to help answer some questions for you. Sometimes it's just as simple as one thought or a different way of looking at it. Like Andy was saying, that the amount of time that we spend just rolling ideas around in our head on what's a good way to help people understand this concept. It's quite a bit, and sometimes it's just as simple as hearing a different point of view on that topic that can all of a sudden turn that light bulb on for you, and you're off and running.
Yeah, I totally agree. And Michelle put this comment out on the broadcast anyway. She's saying, I'm ready to help too. It's not only us, by the way, right?
Absolutely.
We will be the first ones to tell you there are many people, many great people out there like Michelle who is trying to help people together on the on Flow. Now, this is a very good question and a comment that we have right here from Mirel. And she says, Flow matures too fast, which makes it difficult to learn. I agree with that. Sorry to the people who love Flow. After 2 years and doing Trailhead modules 2 times, still don't really know how to translate a use case to Flow. Well, that's the brutal truth also, like from another perspective. Now, there are actually multiple components to that. Let me take that first, Mirel. Now, there are a couple of things that, let me just first say this. I love Trailhead, and I think Trailhead is the best system out there for learning anything, to be honest with you. I mean, it's a wonderful teaching platform with gamification built in, and it's fantastic. But at the same time, I personally don't think it's a good place to learn flows at all. So first of all, there are two components to what you said. One is analyzing use cases. That's another area that Trailhead is not going to teach you, if you ask me. Now, first of all, if you want to analyze use cases better, what I would highly encourage you to do is to get on Salesforce Answers on various different platforms like the Salesforce community Slack and Discord and this and that. Try to understand what kind of use cases are out there that people are struggling with, and try and analyze that yourself, and try to even solve it in like a developer org. That would be a start for you to practice translating use cases into automation or action. And another thing is learning flows, I think, can be better achieved using video, first of all. That's why we do video all the time. And if you can do live video where you can ask questions like this one, or like the sessions that Terry is proposing, then you are going to be personally more engaged, and you are going to get more things out of it. So yeah, flows can be definitely learned and taught, but it's a difficult topic. I mean, it takes time. And like the great saying, I mean, everything is impossible until you do it, right? So I always say it, you're going to listen to the topic for the first time, or you're going to try and learn for the first time, and it's going to be gibberish to you. But if you do it long enough, you're going to understand it, right? So what would you say about this topic, Terry?
So I'm going to be the opposite a little bit. I'm not a huge fan of Trailhead, and I'm probably going to get slapped for that one. The reason for that is anybody can follow a recipe, and a lot of and by all means, I'm generalizing a lot of the training things I've seen on Trailhead. It just says basically follow this recipe and you're off and you win the prize. I like to have to think a little bit more critically about why I'm following the recipe and why I'm doing some of the things that it's asking me to do, so that I understand it a little bit better. And to me, Trailhead falls just slightly short in that regard. And I think it is maybe some of what you're referencing with that critical thinking side of it. That makes it. I don't misread what I'm saying, and I'm not telling people don't use Trailhead. I use it too. I go out there and I follow those recipes and I do what it says. But I want to dig just sometimes slightly deeper than what Trailhead is able to offer, if that makes sense.
That makes total sense. I mean, the one thing that I wanted to add to that, which I'm pretty sure you'll agree with, is like we as consultants, one of the most important skills that the consultants or business analysts or anybody trying to implement business requirements could have is asking very good questions, right? You ask questions, you try to get to the bottom of things, and why is this being done this way? Can it be done better, and this and that? And then at the end of that, you get your user stories, requirements, and then you translate that into automation and code, right? So that's the one thing that you cannot do at all using Trailhead. Like now we have the super badges, right? The super badges are okay. I've done one, but the way super badges handle this, they are kind of like case studies. They actually leave out some information that you are supposed to research and find out so that you can get the whole thing solved. But that's not how real life works, to be honest with you. In real life, if you don't understand something, you don't have that information, you go ask for that information, you get the answers. So it is not a real life simulation again.
Yeah. Again, I think it's a great product for what it does, and I think it's absolutely amazing that Salesforce has put that together, and they do it at no cost for the consumers. I remember it's been a few years. I was flying out to Dreamforce, and there was almost the entire plane of people all of us were going to Dreamforce, and I was talking to one of the guys sitting next to me about Trailhead, and I was thinking, you know what? I'm surprised that Salesforce doesn't sell this Trailhead concept, and we get to Trailhead, and it was the year that they introduced My Trailhead, and it's exactly what they were doing. It is a fantastic platform, and the application for it is incredible. So it's well done. I think there's just some things where it's just hard to teach. I think the people that are building these things are absolutely incredibly smart. I've talked with a lot of people that do it. And so by no means do I want to belittle that effort, but it can be very difficult to put content together that helps people understand the why and that critical thinking aspect of it. It's just very, very difficult to do.
Thank you very much. And we are on the top of the hour. And Terry, thank you so much. This has been great. And at the same time, it's been so much fun. I didn't realize it was going to be so much fun. Thank you so much for doing this with
Absolutely.
me. And to everybody who has been listening, thank you so much for joining. We went up to 20 people at some point. I don't know if that's on the LinkedIn or YouTube or the combination of all, but I'm not sure. So follow us on YouTube and Twitter. You can contact us on LinkedIn too, but I personally don't love LinkedIn that much. This is on LinkedIn. Sorry about that.
Oops.
Yeah, find us and tell us how we can help you, because we are constantly trying to understand how we can help you. All right?
Right.
Thank you very much. Everybody have
Andy,
a great day. And Terry, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Andy. That's fantastic. I appreciated your putting this together. Awesome. It's great to get to know
everybody.
you.
I wave at the end of Zooms.
All right. Take care.